Hey everyone, and welcome back to Suited Aces Poker, where every week we scour YouTube for 10 of the best hands played by poker vloggers. Hopefully you're enjoying the channel. If you are, show some love by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. It really does help out the channel a whole bunch. This is a special episode. It's that time of the month where we show you 10 of the best from the month, and this video is all about April. So we have 10 of the best from April 2022. In this episode, we've got excellent analysis, interesting bet sizing, and some beautiful live tells. So sit back, relax, and let's make a start. Kicking things off for us at number 10 for April, Jaman Burton is playing at the Rounders Card Club in San Antonio, Texas. He's in a $300 buy-in, no-limit hold'em tournament, and donk.
Lines go up and effective stacks get shorter and shorter. Play becomes a lot easier as post-flop dancing is extremely restricted and pre-flop wars become the thing. Here the blinds are 20k, 40k with a 20k ante, and I raise to 110k off of about 850k. Action folds to the cutoff, and he decides to go with it. He shoves for slightly less, about 700k. At some point, you just have to gamble. You have to win a flip or two. So let's gamble. I call. Cards go on their backs and he reveals Ace-7 of hearts. Wow, I'm in much better shape than I thought. Well, that is until the Ace-King-6 flop. This is bad. Really bad. I'm pretty good at math, and by my calculations, there aren't many 7s left in this deck. The dealer burns and turns the 7 of clubs. You have to be kidding me. A one-outer. We go ahead and fade the river and pull off a late-stage double-up.
At number 9, Mariano is at the Gardens in California. He's in a big 10-20 cash game, and, well, we weren't expecting that.
We're going to start things off with pocket fours in the small blind. Already a sketchy situation, but here we go. Button opens to 120. I make it 500 because no gamble, no future, and he calls. Heads up to a flop of Queen 10-7 with 2 hearts. Somewhat neutral board, but I think it's a little better for the button, so I check and he checks it back. The turn is a 9, further dissuading me from betting, so I check again and he checks it back. Now it seems he has some sort of showdown value, like a medium strength pair. So when the river comes an offsuit jack, meaning ace-king is now the nuts, I think a big bet is in order. I throw out $1,500, expecting to win this hand fairly often. However, before I tell you guys what happened, I gotta admit, I kind of hate this bet looking back, because if I had ace-king, I would have bet on the flop, but hey, at least my opponent doesn't know that, right? Anyway, he goes in the tank for a long time before finally deciding to call. I tell him you win, but he seems reluctant to show. So I show my hand and he turns over pocket fours also. So yeah, this hand was some comedy for sure.
No wonder if I want to show. What the fuck was that? No.
Who do you think is worse at this game, me or you?
I think I'm really sure I am.
At number 8 for April, and your boy Ethan, Rampage Poker, is playing in a 50-50 cash game at the Wynn in Vegas. And in this hand, this really is an example of when your 2-pair just never feels quite big enough.
Why not try doing something else and experiment with a 6-way, $50, no-limit hold'em, one-board bomb pot? Bomb potting it, we go with $300 in the middle. We're off to a flop, which comes 10-6 deuce, 2 spades, and I look down at a premium, good-looking 6 deuce offsuit. Good enough for bottom 2 pair, and the small blind here, first to act, bets out $60. Then, next to act, to my right, raises to $260, and now it's on to me. Wow. It's really weird here in this spot as the small blind is leading into the entire field, which seems like he has a pretty strong hand. Then when the big blind raises him, he must have an even stronger range. But with 2 pair here, I certainly can't fold, and now it's a question of raising or making the call. And ultimately, I think raising is a little bit of an overplay with only bottom 2 pair, as we can lose to 10-6, 10-deuce, and some sets. Anyways, for 260, I just make the call. Action folds all the way around back to the small blind player, who decides that $260 is not enough. He puts in another raise, 3-betting it up to 880. The big blind now folds pretty quickly, and he just made a complete mess of this hand and wants to abort mission. Now it's on to me now. I'm in position now at least, and I think this is really tricky. Like I said, this is super strong for him to do this with, and I don't think he's going to be bluffing here. The other issue is that I hold the 6 of spades in my hand, so this player can't even have a semi-bluff like a pair and flush draw. So there's a lot of merit to just folding here, and especially with how the night's been going, I kind of want to do that. But I have 2 pair, and it seems like a sin to fold 2 pair on the flop so far, so how about I just make the call and maybe fold on bad runouts? That's the plan I have in mind. I'm going to be sticky for now and call, but definitely not feeling great about it. So when I make the call, we're going to a turn heads up, which comes the 4 of diamonds. And on this board, that doesn't really change the board a whole lot. He continues once again, this time to $1,540. Holy crap. Today has been pretty damn horrible when it comes to cards, and I really wouldn't be surprised here if I'm beat, considering how much strength he's repping right now. In-game, you won't really believe it, but I really wanted to fold this one, but ultimately, I end up just sticking it in, $1,540. I make the call with a good amount to play for behind as well. Pretty much just hoping to fade a spade and also hoping that he only has a spade draw. We're off to a river, which comes the disastrous 5 of spades. 4-liner on the board, flush draw gets there, and I don't think I beat a single thing. Anyways, he actually checks to me, which is a huge sigh of relief. Maybe my hand can be good here, but I'm happy to just get this to showdown. No need to bet, because I don't really get called by much worse. I check this one back, and he surprisingly shows us Queen 10 for just top pair, and my 6 deuce is going to win it, so believe it or not, did not expect to win this hand, but found one of those very small hands that I did beat as played, and wow.
At number 7 is close to broke. He's playing at the Bike in California. He's in a 10-20 cash game, and as Kieran himself says, this has to be the call of the night.
As we find ourselves in another spot, the cutoff decides to raise to $120. It folds over to me in the big blind, and I decide to make the call with King Jack offsuit. Probably works better as a 3-bet sometimes at some certain frequencies, but at the end of the day, I don't mind just calling. The straddle makes a fold. We're going heads up to a flop that comes pretty great. Jack 9-3 with 2 spades. A very dynamic board texture. Ton of straight draws, ton of flush draws out there. My opponent's gonna have like an infinite amount of those combinations from the cutoff. I check it over to him, and he decides to bet $210. This is one of the action players I was telling you about earlier. One of the fun players of the group. The one that I lost that massive pot with Ace Queen against. But he's super fun to play against, and he's very aggressive. It makes me think a lot, and you'll see in this hand. We're going off to a turn card that comes the 5 of clubs. I check it over to my opponent, and he decides to bomb this turn card for $860. Really massive sizing, and it would be really nitty of me to make the fold. The funny thing is that you can probably hear in the audio just a tad bit. He's saying that he wants to get me to fold all of my flush draws.
Pretty amazing.
And I don't have a flush draw, sir. I do have pretty much the top of my range here, so I end up making the call. We're going off to a river that comes literally, and I'm not exaggerating, the worst card that could have possibly peeled off. That is the Queen of Spades. Every single draw that exists on the planet Earth has come in. Straight draws, flush draws, you name it, it got there. Even a hand like Queen 10, a straight draw that didn't get there, now beats me as it makes top pair. The interesting thing is that when I check it over to him, he decides to bet for $1,700. Why I think that's interesting is that pretty much eliminates all single pair holdings in my opinion. This is a very dynamic board texture, and it would be really weird for my opponent to be going for value with anything really less than top 2 pair, it feels like. Besides that, I feel like it had to be a straight or a flush. And for me, that's relatively polar. One thing of note that I think is very important is that I am holding the King of Spades, so I do block some of his made flush combinations. I end up going to the tank for what is actually probably the longest tank I've ever had in my poker vlog career. I end up tanking what feels like over 3 minutes. A lot is going through my mind, like I told you, against specifically this player. He is super aggressive and puts you in so many tough spots that there is an opportunity that he can just have some air here, some random dust that can be settling into the sky. It's really hard to tell. And he can obviously also turn ace 10 of spades or some, the nuts against me. He just has that potential. And if that's the case, I'm not scared money. I came here with the understanding that I'm going to have to make some big calls and I'm going to have to make some big folds. This is a spot where I have to do one of the two. At this exact moment, I'm sitting with about $2,500 or $2,700 in my stack right now, somewhere in the realm, and this would be for most of it. If I make the call and I'm wrong, I'm left with pennies. After enough of pause, I end up making what is the biggest call, I think, of my poker career. My opponent tells me,
would you believe that I never saw my cards? I never saw them. I don't know what I have.
no way.
No, yeah, I never saw them. It's a jack. I never saw them. Yeah.
Wow, what a call.
At this point, I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? He flips over the deuce first, followed by a 7. 7 deuce offsuit. Jeez Louise. I show down my king jack for an unbelievably great bluff on his end, obviously using his range advantage there. Picking off a bluff, which was probably a pretty bad call, but I just used a couple of live tails to help me get to that decision. And we're just going to have to live with it, and obviously you can't complain when you bink a massive pot like that.
At number 6, close to broke again, this time in a 5-10 cash game at the Commerce in California. And this is some really interesting analysis on an unusual live tell.
We look down at King 10 offsuit. I decide to raise from the cutoff to $35. The OMC slow roller on the button decides to make the call. We're going off to a flop that comes ace 7 3 with 2 spades. The action starts off with me. I'm going to continue betting my entire range here. Half the size of the pot is what I end up betting for $35. I like to go maybe a little smaller, like a tad bit, betting a catch-all sizing, but I end up making it $35. My opponent pretty quickly calls, and the turn card comes the 8 of hearts. On this juncture, I'm going to continue telling the story that I'm representing an ace here, a strong one at that, so I end up betting $65. My opponent pretty quickly calls and ends up doing something that causes a little bit of pause in my head to think about something that I've seen in the past. My opponent calls and then pushes forward his chips as well as my chips, which usually indicates a couple of things. One, the pace of his call was really fast, which lends me to believe that he's fairly weak, or at least drawing. And when an opponent pushes his chips, there is a chance, this is not set in stone, and this is not like white magic 100% of the time going to work, but usually that does signify weakness as well, or at least somebody trying to catch a draw. So if the river bricks out in any sense, if there's no straight draws that complete, if there's no flush draws that complete, I'm considering betting it, even though I only have king high. The river comes a 7 of clubs. As you guys can see, it pairs the second card, but it doesn't change a lot to the board dynamics. It also doesn't complete any straights or any flushes. So when the action's on to me, on this really boring card on the river, I'm going to bet $150 representing what is more likely my range going to be consisting of a pretty solid ace, ace king, ace queen, ace jack. Would be very comfortable going for 3 barrels of value on this run out. My opponent thinks about it before ending up throwing his hand away. Pretty happy to get that through there. Not sure if he had a flush draw or whatever he had, but that live tilt seemed like it really came in handy there.
Top 5 then for April, and at number 5, Rampage Poker is at the Bike in Bell Gardens, California. He's playing in a $600 tournament and, set over set? But hold on just a second.
My table is now playing a little short-handed because I've been stacking everyone, and this hand with pocket sixes and +1, there's an ungun open to 22,000 with about 300k in stack. I decide on making the call with sixes. It's a good hand to play. The big blind calls as well. We're going to a flop 3 raise in position, which, why wouldn't it come? Jack 7-6, 2 hearts, a bank with bottom set, and even better, the ungun player bets out 35k. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of the raising because a set and 3 of a kind is going to be a pretty good hand. I decided to raise it up to 100,000 in position. The blind smartly gets out of the way, but this ungun player jams for 300,000 give or take total. I snap call, I show my sixes, and he has pocket sevens. Oh my God. That's pretty gross. I tell him nice hands, and big shout out to Steven for flopping set over set against me, who's a vlog watcher. The turn brick, river 6! Oh my God! Oh my God! Jesus Christ. No freaking way. One outer for quads. Losing my mind. So is the table. Not only have I been steamrolling everyone and stacking everyone left and right, but now, first time in my entire life, I've hit a one outer for quads. Pretty brutal, pretty gross, and I still have to give a huge shout out to Steven, who watches the channel and who I sucked out on in this video. Big shout out to you for being a good sport. It must be pretty gross to end your tournament life from a one outer.
At number 4, and Ashley Sleeth is in a $230 tournament. She's playing at the Wynn in Vegas. And this one's worth watching for the analysis, not for the hand.
Only a few hands after that, we looked down at the beautiful Jack 10 of spades, flicking the open to 1600, and just the big blind comes along. The flop is Ace 7 deuce rainbow with 1 spade. The driest of dry flops. I have a backdoor flush draw. I have the range advantage by opening early position against the big blind's call. He's got all kinds of hands, so obviously I'm gonna c-bet. So I bet 1200. My friend in the big blind has been commenting on some hands that I've played, maybe noting some of that aggression that I was talking about earlier, and he just looks like he wants to go after it. Like sometimes you could just look at someone and tell that they have devious thoughts going through their head, and he follows through. He check raises the flop to 3,500. You know what? I don't believe him. I'm just looking at his face. I'm looking at this board texture. I think that, yes, he could have ace deuce. He could have ace 7. But a lot of people don't peel 7 deuce from the big blind, even the suited variety. A lot of people even slow play a set on this board. That's not always true, but I have to keep that in mind that he's repping a really, really narrow range of hands to be confidently raising this flop. He knows I'm going to be c-betting at 100%. He knows that I bet small and he can get away with one by raising. So with all of that being said, I decided to peel one off and see what he does on the turn. I'm really gonna force him to go after it if he wants to win this pot. The turn is the 6 of spades. So things are getting interesting. We turn a flush draw. That's one of the cards we're probably gonna be continuing on, depending on what happens. In this case, he bets 6,100, so he's not slowing down. It's a pretty good price, and I know I can most likely get all of his chips if I backdoor into a flush, and he actually has one of the strong hands that he's representing. So I call, and the river is the 3 of spades. We make a flush, and we're hoping for him to stick his remaining 17,000 or so in the middle. Instead, he waves the white flag, or what I think him waving the white flag, and checks it. I put the rest in. He doesn't take too long. He snap folds, and he claims he had Queen 3 of hearts. He didn't claim this right away. He claimed this later because it was a hand that really baffled him. He claimed that he figured that no matter what ace I had, he thought I would fold the turn, which that's never happening. I'm never folding an ace to his check raise on the flop and bet on the turn. He might put me in the blender by the river, but I'm never folding on the turn when I have an ace. And that's because, honestly, you guys, I don't think a lot of people check raise ace 10 suited, ace jack suited. I don't think they raise enough top pairs with medium-ish kickers. So if that were the case, if I thought that he raised a lot of those hands, I can give him credit for actually having a lot more value. But in this case, I didn't really think he had it. We lucked out and got there. But honestly, if it was a brick and he checked it to me, I would have ripped it because of all the reasons I stated before. I was really gonna go after this pot no matter what happened. Happy that it worked out the way it did. We were feeling feisty and it worked out.
At number 3 for April, and Erick Mondragon, the self-styled fish, is playing in a 2-3 cash game at the Hustler in California. And this was the first time we had featured fish, but there was certainly plenty more to come.
Now I want you fishes to pay attention to something that might sound stupid for me to say, but this set off an itch in my butt that didn't feel right. This was a $20 bet with confidence coming from a gentleman that hasn't been in too much action since I've been here. Sure, it's only been about 40 minutes, but making it $20 with no limpers when the standard pre-flop bet has been $15? Something doesn't seem right. It might be nothing, but nonetheless, we continue with our hand looking down at pocket jiggities. Brad Owen, thank you for the shout out. We're on the button, and given our history with pocket jiggities, we're gonna go on and just flat here, and we're gonna go heads up to a flop of 4-5-8 with 2 clubs. My opponent goes on and puts out a pretty big bet of 30 bucks on a board that is beautiful for my jiggities. My opponent has ace king or some random picture cards, then I'm not gonna let him get there for cheap, so I go on and I repop him to 75 bucks. I am not even done putting in my 75 when my opponent announces that he's all in for another 205 of his hard-earned moolah. I go into the tank longer than this pandemic, and after adding up every red flag here, I'm just gonna have to let this one go. I'm gonna respect you, man. Take it. Take it. Oh, yeah, baby. Our opponent is nice enough to show us that we matrix the bullet here as he goes on and shows us pocket kings. Nice fold, fish.
In second place for April, Lexo is playing in a 5-10 cash game at the Seminole in Coconut Creek, Florida. And I said it when we made the weekly video, I will say it again, I am in shock. I literally have no idea what I'm supposed to say about this hand.
The player sitting next to me, who has been making jokes and making the table super fun all night, decides to buy a full round of drinks for the entire table, and things start to get pretty crazy. With lime margarita flowing through my veins, we're ready to play some big pots, nice and loosened up now with pocket kings. That is what I'm talking about. I make it $75 from middle position. The button makes the call, who is a player who has been playing very tight. I think he's played about 2 hands in the last 2 hours. Under the gun makes the call as well. 3 ways to queen 9-3 rainbow. When it checks to me, I bet $125, and the button snap raises me here to $500. This may seem like a great spot to be in. Getting raised with pocket kings on a queen high board, and against a lot of other players, I would be feeling very good about my hand. But against this guy, he hadn't got out of line the entire night, played basically 2 hands. So when he raises here, he's saying he's got 2 pair or a set, or maybe even pocket aces. I really hate doubling up people who don't play many hands, but can I ever fold pocket kings here? I don't think so. He's representing such a strong range of basically queen 9, pocket 9s, and pocket queens. I think he would re-raise pocket queens pre-flop. So I call, and we see the deuce of hearts on the turn, a total brick. Doesn't change anything at all. I check over to him, and he jams all in for $1,100. The way my opponent is playing this hand, he's saying he has a super strong hand and pocket kings are probably never good, but his bet timing did not make too much sense to me. On the flop, he snap raised me to $500. If he would have flopped a set on the flop, wouldn't he think about his bet sizing for a little bit longer? Maybe contemplate calling and slow playing, or making it $300 or $400? Given the fact that he just snap raised to $500 seemed a little bit suspicious to me. And now on the turn, when he snap shoves all in for $1,100, it just seems a little bit fishy. But would he ever do this with a straight draw? I mean, Jack 10 is the only draw here. Maybe he's got King 10, but we block that. He could possibly have Ace Queen and think it's good. Maybe he flatted with Kings pre-flop, and he thinks those are good as well. After thinking for over a minute, I just think I cannot fold. If he's got me, he's got me. So I make the call. I can't fold.
Kings, right?
Whatever you want. All right, twice.
2 times?
Jack 10. Jack 10 of hearts. Ace Queen of hearts. Jack 10 got there. Jack 10 got there twice. Oh my lord. God. What'd I say? I told you Jack 10.
And I had his out.
And at number 1 for April, who is in the coveted first place of the month? It is Erick Mondragon. Here he is again. He's in 3rd place for April. He's in 1st place for April. And in this hand, we see some pretty unconventional bet sizing on this one.
Now we're on the big blind looking down at Queen 10 suited. The under the gun limps, and our Alaskan friend makes it 15 bucks. The small blind calls, I make the call, and we're going 3 ways to a flop of ace, king, jack, rainbow. Hell freaking yeah, we flop the nuts. The small blind checks, I go on and check, and our Alaskan friend goes on and fires off a wager of 16 bucks. The small blind calls the 16 bucks, and I'm gonna go on and show some aggression, so in my most manliest voice, I go on and I say,
all right, I'm gonna raise it. I'm gonna make it 17.
All right, so I know 17 bucks is not gonna be enough. I have to make it 32. I did say raise before I put in those 17, so my raise stands. Both my opponents make the call, and we're gonna go 3 ways to see an 8 on the turn. Our nuts are not compromised at the moment, so the big blind checks to me, and I most definitely cannot check this back. So I go on and I ask the dealer,
what's the minimum?
$2 is the minimum bet, which makes perfect sense as this is a $1, $2 game. I need a sizing that's gonna throw off my opponent, so I go on and land on a massive bet of
$3.
I didn't expect this. To my surprise, both of my opponents go on and make the call, and we're gonna go 3 ways to see a king on the river. Now that's a great card for me. If my opponents had ace, king, or better, they wouldn't just call the $3 on the turn. The small blind now checks. I'm gonna go all in for $121, and my only caller was my Alaskan friend who shows king, queen. He river trips, but that's no good for my flopped straight, and we are gonna go on and take this pot down. Hell freaking yeah.
$3 on the turn, Eric. We laughed and laughed in the Suited Aces studio. What a great hand. Very nicely played. And congratulations on your #1 spot for April. So that's it, folk. There you have it. 10 of the best for April 2022. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to press the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out a lot. As always at Suited Aces Poker, if you want to see the original video content, click on the link down in the description box below. Until next time, good luck at the felt.